All right. All right, can y'all see that?
Yep.
All right, good. Dysfunction, that's the topic of this chapter. If you got a chance to read it, it's kind of one of the few chapters in 2 Kings that's a little bit more straightforward. It's got a little bit less narrative in it, and it just kind of shotguns kind of 8 different kings or 7 different kings. We're going to talk about 8. But that's kind of the dysfunction is really the word for this chapter. It's kind of the word I use for how we kind of do things now here with our government. You know, it's kind of it's somewhat dysfunctional in the sense that it's highly partisan. So one side is fighting against the other side and refuses to you know, give in, and then the other side fights against the other side and does it. So it's kind of like that in a sense. So you'll see what I mean. Get some background here. 2 Kings 15, number 1, it says the southern kingdom continues to have somewhat consistent leadership. Unfortunately, the leadership was not tough enough on idolatry, and so it continues to spread amongst the people of the south. So the leadership in the southern kingdom of Judah, it's a lot better than the leadership they have in the north, but it's kind of one of those. Well, I don't want to get too much into politics, so I'll keep going. Number 2, the northern kingdom is full of all kinds of dysfunction and problems, and now there's only 3 decades before Assyria takes it away into captivity. So from 2 Kings 15, where we're starting tonight, till we get to 2 Kings 17, where a nation called Assyria, not Syria, but Assyria, it's a little bit further north, comes in, and they're going to take them away into captivity. Just like later you're going to see that Babylon is going to come and take the southern kingdom into captivity. So, but it happens quite a bit later. Number 3, despite the fact that the people have turned their hearts against God, he continues to send to them prophet after prophet in order to turn their hearts back to them. God has not given up on them, but they have turned their backs to him. So despite the fact that they hate God, God continues to reach out to them. He sends them different prophets. You'll see in this chapter. In fact, in 2 Kings 15, 4 prophets begin to preach in this chapter during the reigns of these kings. One of them was Isaiah. So the Isaiah who wrote the book of Isaiah, he begins preaching in this chapter. But he's not mentioned in this chapter, but we know that based off of Isaiah 1:1 and Isaiah 6:1. Also, you have Hosea. He begins as well to preach in this chapter as well. And you know that from Hosea 1:1. And then Amos as well, same thing, not mentioned, but he is from Amos 1:1, I believe. And then Jonah. Jonah is actually mentioned at the end of chapter 14. So 4 prophets that you have in your Old Testament start preaching during this time. So what you need to do now is in your free time, you need to go read those 4 books, because now you have some context as to what God is talking about in regard to what's happening. So text breakdown: 8 kings, Jeroboam II, Azariah, Zechariah, Shalom, Menahem, Pekahiah, Pekah, and Jotham. And only 2 of them are in the south. Azariah and Jotham are in the south. The other 6 are in the north. So, oops. All right, let's get into the text. We're actually going to start at chapter 14 because we didn't finish that last time just because it was going to be so long. And it kind of fit better with this chapter anyways. So we have a man named Jeroboam II, and you'll see up here at the top, I write their name and I write which kingdom they represent. So he represents the north. In verses 23 and 24, it says, in the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, I messed up. Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, began to reign in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. So that's a pretty good amount of time. Jeroboam, the son of Joash. And you'll notice, by the way, I call him, his name is Jeroboam, and then I put 2 because he's Jeroboam the second. You remember the first Jeroboam? He's the one who, he was the first king of the northern kingdom, and now you have Jeroboam the second here. So verse 24, it says, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. So he's compared to the first Jeroboam, Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and then we have now Jeroboam, the son of Joash. So it's 2 different men with different names. You know, like I said, every week now, these names keep getting more and more confusing. Now notice it says he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Okay, so we know what kind of a king he is right from the beginning, not the kind of king that God approves of. Every one of the kings in the north in this chapter, that's what it says about them. Both the kings in the south, it says that they did what was right in the sight of the Lord. So in verse 25, it says, he restored the border of Israel from Lebo Hamath as far as the sea of the Arabah, according to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke by his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, who was from Gath-Hepher. So that's the same Jonah, the son of Amittai, who wrote the book of Jonah, the one who gets swallowed by the big fish. That's the exact same one. So outside of the book of Jonah, this is the only time that he's ever mentioned. And so he did actually do more than go to Nineveh and get swallowed by a fish. He was actually a prophet to his own people as well. He was a prophet to the people in the north. And so he's actually a pretty important prophet in the scriptures. In verses 26 and 27, it says, for the Lord saw the affliction of Israel was very bitter, for there was none left, bond or free, and there was none to help Israel. But the Lord had not said that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven. So he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, the son of Joash. So God shows them mercy here for at least a second. Let me ask you guys this. God sends them prophets. He shows them mercy. Did God have to do that?
No.
He didn't have to do that?
No.
So when God sends a prophet, is that his way of condemning people or
No.
trying to save people?
Trying to save, reach out.
Yes. Prophets are generally, in general, they are sent to cause people to turn away from their sin. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any reason to tell them what they did wrong. You know, you would just punish them. But rather, God sends out prophets for the purpose of turning people away from sin. So that was kind of the whole point. So God is showing them mercy at this time. In verses 28 and 29, it says, now the rest of the acts of Jeroboam and all that he did, and his might, how he fought, and how he restored Damascus and Hamath to Judah and Israel, are they not written in the books of the Chronicles of Israel? And Jeroboam slept with his fathers, the kings of Israel, and Zechariah his son reigned in his place. A couple of things about Jeroboam the second before we move forward. He was known as a man. So when he was king, he did a really good job at keeping the economy strong. And so, for example, if you were to go look at like archaeology and things like that, the archaeologists said that when he became king, all of a sudden houses got a lot bigger, and there were much more extravagant things. So he was very good for the northern nation economically. He was horrible spiritually. He did not help them grow closer to God at all. He didn't help them turn away from their sins. He didn't do anything, but he did do that. So, for example, the book of Amos is preaching during this time. Amos chapter 3 and verse 13, it says, hear and testify against the house of Jacob, says the Lord, the God of hosts. Now the house of Jacob is the northern kingdom. That in the day I punish Israel for their transgressions, I will also visit destructions on the altars of Bethel, and the horns of the altar shall be cut off and fall to the ground. I will destroy the winter house along with the summer house. The houses of ivory shall perish, and the great houses shall have an end, says the Lord. So winter house, summer house, houses of ivory, great houses. Obviously that speaks of prosperity. That kind of speaks to a time of prosperity. And that's kind of when all of this is happening. So God is not judging them because of those things. God is judging them because they love those things more than they love him. So any questions, comments before I move to the next king?
No.
Okay. One second. Oh, wait, this is what I was missing here. I wanted to make a point back here in verse 27. It says, so he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, the son of Joash. So it's interesting that Jeroboam didn't honor God, and yet God used him to do good things. What do you guys think about that?
Well, he does that all the time.
Do you guys think he does that today?
Sure.
I think so.
Yeah, so it's not required that it's not impossible that good things can come through bad people, particularly through leaders. All leaders have faults, don't they? Every leader has a fault. Would you guys agree with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
The worst leaders are the ones who think that they don't have faults. Those are the types of leaders you really don't want above you. A good leader knows he has faults and is somewhat open about those faults, and honest about those faults. I'll give you an example. Samson was one of the judges, and God did a lot of good things through Samson, but Samson was the biggest womanizer you'd ever met. He just could not get enough of women. I remember one point where he goes into a city and he finds a prostitute and he spends the night with her, and then he leaves, and as he's leaving, remember Samson had great strength, he takes the gate bars off of the gate, breaks the gate down, takes the gate bars off of the gate and takes it up a mountain. And then you look at this, you're like, okay, he walks into a city, lays with a prostitute, and then steals the gate, and yet he's the guy who did a lot of actually good things for the nation during that time. So it's just interesting to think that that God does those types of things. So just keep that in mind. All right, in chapter 15, beginning here, you have Azariah. Now, Azariah is also called Uzziah, and that's usually the name that when I hear preachers talk about him, they call him Uzziah. Azariah, he's called Uzziah in Second Chronicles 26, and he is a king in the south. He actually is a good king, but he's a good king with a unfortunate issue later on in life. It says, in the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah, the son of Amaziah, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem. So 52 years. That's the longest reign that we have seen so far, 52 years. So pretty good, pretty good. And verses 3-5, it says, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. So in the south, you see that phrase, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. In the north, you never see that. In verse 5, it says, nevertheless, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. So this problem continues. This problem is going to continue until you see King Josiah. He's going to be the one to take this problem away. But that's way too many kings. When you're a leader, you generally want to take things slow, but there are certain times where you just need to bring stuff down. You just need to handle it. And they didn't handle it. So Josiah is going to be the one with the backbone, enough backbone to actually handle the problem and do things right. So in verse 5, it says, and the Lord touched the king so that he was a leper to the day of his death, and he lived in a separate house. And Jotham, the king's son, was over the household, governing the people of the land. So, you're reading this, you see he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Nevertheless, he didn't take away the high places. And all of a sudden in verse 5, you're hit with God turns him into a leper. And you're wondering, well, why? What exactly happened? Well, 2 Chronicles 26 tells you what happened. He was he was a good king, but he got puffed up. He was very prideful. So he went into the temple one day and he wanted to offer incense to God, and that was a job that was only given to the priest. God wouldn't let even a king do it. It was a job that he gave strictly to the priest. He went in there. They told him he wasn't allowed to go in there. He didn't want to believe him, and God struck him with leprosy because he did that. So now, believe it or not, that was actually a merciful thing that God did, because according to Numbers 18 and verse 7, when I wrote it down, let me double check. Numbers 18 and verse 7, that was a crime punishable by death. So God didn't give him the death penalty in that particular instance. He made him a leper. Of course, in the same way, you might say that actually might be worse. So, but that's what happened to him. And unfortunately, a good king had to suffer even a good king had to suffer the consequences of his actions. So in verses 6 and 7, it says, now the rest of the acts of Azariah, all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Azariah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David, and Jotham his son reigned in his place. The usual obituary for the kings. Every one of the kings pretty much has that exact same obituary in regard to it. Once again, with the case of Jeroboam, he was a bad king that God used to do good things. In the case of Azariah or Uzziah, he was a good king, and yet he made poor decisions as well. All leaders are full of awful faults. So, did you guys hear about Ravi Zacharias? Have you guys ever heard of Ravi Zacharias?
No.
Nobody has? Doug, you ever heard of him?
Don't think so. It's not ringing a bell anyway.
Okay. He was an apologist. And not that doesn't mean he said sorry. What it means is that he made a defense for the Christian faith. He kind of took a more philosophical defense, but from time to time I would listen to him on certain stuff. But he died last year, and he was probably one of the most well-known. He was probably in the top 5 well-known apologists in the world, in the whole world. And, he went everywhere and taught, and, he was invited everywhere and did a lot of things. Well, he died last May from cancer, and it came out a couple months ago that he had cheated on his wife, and that he had, he opened up, he basically, well, I don't even want to describe all the stuff he did, but let's just say he was not doing the right stuff. And so this was after he died that everybody figured this out. And, it was a reminder to me once again, everybody has to remember that all leaders have problems and faults. Whoever you think, whatever person that you look at, other than Christ himself, any person that you look at in your life and you say, this person is great, I trust them always, you have to not idolize them. Don't do that. You're not doing yourself any favors because you idolize them and then you figure out that the guy did this or that she did that or something like that. You just have to be careful about those things. All leaders are full of faults. So, any questions, comments? Anybody want to add to that? Anything?
Reminds me, there was another apologist. It was pretty popular. Bert Thompson. You remember him?
I do. Yeah.
He had a lot of things came out about him as well.
Yeah. And what's sad about that, Doug, is his book, probably the best, most useful apologetics book I've ever read.
The Rock Solid Faith.
Yes, probably one of the best ones I've ever read. Most clear, concise. He doesn't use big words. I mean, he's just excellent with that.
It is a really good book.
Yes. So, same thing. Everybody, don't idolize anyone. Don't idolize any man. They will fail you. David was a great king, but we all know what David did. So just be careful with those things. All right, continuing on, let's look at Zechariah, who's the next king. Now this one goes back to the north. We went from the south to the north. So in verses 8 through 10, it says, in the 38th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Zechariah, the son of Jeroboam, reigned over Israel in Samaria 6 months. Now look at that, 6 months. That's not very long, is it? In verse 9, it says, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his fathers had done. He did what was evil. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. And then in verse 10, check this out. Shalom, the son of Jabesh, conspired against him and struck him down at Ibleam and put him to death and reigned in his place. Okay, so this is kind of the definition of dysfunction here. You've got a king. The king has a son. His son takes his place. 6 months later, you got an assassination. It doesn't matter, for the most part. Assassinations are never good for any country. That's just not a good thing. Well, this is assassination number 1. There's going to be more, but this is number 1. Keep that in mind. So Shalom is going to take his place. He killed him. His obituary here, Zechariah's obituary. Now the rest of the deeds of Zechariah, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. This was the promise of the Lord that he gave to Jehu. Your sons shall sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. And so it came to pass. Now that you may not remember that, but back when Jehu, if you remember, he was the one who was a very bloody king. As soon as he took the throne, he killed Jezebel. He killed Amaziah and Joash, and he killed all of them. And then all of Amaziah's sons, or no, I'm mixing them up now. All of Joash's sons, he had killed all 70 of them, and then had their heads cut off, and then had them placed outside of the city so everybody could see. You guys might remember that. Well, he was such a bloody king. God said, because he was so excessive, essentially, God told him, okay, I'm going to give you to the 4th generation. I'll make sure somebody in your family sits on the throne until the 4th generation. Well, Zechariah was the last one. Well, even though it got to the 4th generation, he only got 6 months. So God promised, he kept his promise, and then as soon as the promise was taken care of, Zechariah was out of the way. So it came to pass. God kept his promise like he said he would. So in verses 13 and 14, now we have Shallum's reign. Shalom in the north, who just assassinated Zechariah. Shalom, son of Jabesh, began to reign in the 39th year of Uzziah, king of Judah, and he reigned 1 month in Samaria. Then Menahem, the son of Gadi, came up from Tirzah and came to Samaria, and he struck down Shalom, son of Jabesh, in Samaria, and put him to death and reigned in his place. Okay, here we go again. So Shalom just killed Zechariah, who's been on the throne for 6 months. Shalom's on the throne for 1 month. Now Menahem comes in and kills him. All right. So once again, the dysfunction continues. All of a sudden, we got a new king again. So this is bad. You got to think about this. This is less than 1 year for these people, and now they're on their 3rd king. That's not good. That's dysfunctional. That's not good for anybody. Imagine if in 1 year Fairfax had 3 different preachers. Would that be good or bad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you have 3 different preachers, either something's wrong with the preachers or something's wrong with the people. Either the preachers are leaving because something's wrong with the people, or the people can't, if they're either dissatisfied or can't figure out how to hire a good preacher. So you don't want to have this turnover all the time. And you definitely don't want it to happen this way. Assassination is never a good way to get a new leader, ever. Not ever. So short reign, but that's what he gets. I guess he got what he did previously came right back around to hit him. In verses 15 and 16, now the rest of the deeds of Shalom and the conspiracy that he made, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. At that time, Menahem sacked Tifsa and all who were in it and its territory from Tirzah on, because they did not open it to him. Therefore he sacked it, and he ripped open all the women in it who were pregnant. Wow. So not only does he assassinate the previous king, he gets angry that Tirzah wouldn't let him in to their territory. And so to punish them, he kills all of the pregnant women. Once again. Huh? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Not good.
No, not good. Not good. The dysfunction is just growing. It's just getting worse. We got assassinations. We have horrible, brutal cruelty happening. I mean, you have to be the lowest of the low to do something like this. I mean, this is pure cruelty and brutality. I mean, it's just horrible. So this was, by the way, a practice that was practiced by pagan nations in the past. They would do things like this just as an act of cruelty. They're I mean, you could find a lot of things like that. If you were to look into history, you would find, for example, the Assyrians, who were going to later take Israel. In fact, so when Jonah goes to Nineveh, that's actually the capital of Assyria, and he didn't want to go to preach to them. And a lot of people wonder, well, why didn't he want to go to them? Well, they were pretty murderous people, for one, and he didn't really feel like they deserved God to forgive them. But one of the things they would often do as an act of torture is they would often skin people alive. That was how they would treat people that they would capture and things like that. They also were the first people, if I remember correctly, it was either the Assyrians or the Babylonians. So I could be wrong on this, but I believe it was the Assyrians. They were the first to start crucifying people as well. So the Romans took it and made it so people lived much longer when they did this. So they got good at it, unfortunately. Anyways, senseless acts of brutality continue in the north, and so by the way, that kind of lets you know why exactly God is punishing them. It starts to get clearer and clearer the longer that you read why this is happening in the first place. So let me stop for a second. Do you guys have any questions or comments?
No.
Okay. In verses 17 and 18, it talks about Menahem's reign. It says, in the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Menahem, the son of Gadi, began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 10 years in Samaria. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Once again, it's almost like a record just saying over and over. He did not depart all his days from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. So, at this point, Israel is doing the same thing over and over, and they're just getting worse every step of the way. So that's why God is eventually going to punish them and discipline them, really. And verses 19 and 20, it says, Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, that he might help to confirm his hold on the royal power. Menahem exacted the money from Israel, that is, from all the wealthy men, 50 shekels of silver from every man, to give to the kings of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. So Pul, the king of Assyria, who's also called Tiglath-Pileser III. It's hard to pronounce, and it sounds funny. Tiglath. I can't pronounce it, and it just sounds so funny. Tiglath-Pileser III. That's his name. So he's referred to in either one of those. when he comes to the land of Israel, and he gives them 1,000 talents of silver. So a talent of silver was, if I remember, 5 talents of silver was a month's wages. So this is a lot of money that he gives them. He gets it by taxing the people. Of course, whenever you tax the people more, what does that make the people do?
Well, they weren't very happy about it, I'm sure.
Yeah, most people don't want to be taxed more.
Right.
You know, that's kind of a common thing. People don't like having to pay more taxes than what they have to. So that probably lost him maybe some respect from his people. So he gives him 1,000 talents of silver to basically make sure that things work out. Now, what should he have done? What do you guys think he should have done?
Hmm.
Should have went back and asked for God for help.
There you
But
go.
took matters into his own hands.
There you go. Yeah. So over and over, when you read the Kings, God is offering help. God is giving help. Whenever an army comes up against his own people, he's always there to protect them. If they are fighting for the right reason, if they're doing things the way God wants them to, God has always been there to protect them and to be there for them. But it doesn't even seem here that he even that God is even in his subconscious mind when this happens. So, you know, he's looking at everything from a strictly human standpoint. And that should be a lesson to all of us. Don't do that. Don't do that. We are Christian people. We see problems. We don't necessarily see the solution to the problem, but we know who does, right?
Right.
Paul says in Philippians 4:6-8 to cast your anxieties. He says, "Be anxious about nothing, but in everything let your requests be made known to God." Be anxious about nothing, but in everything let your requests be made known to God, and the peace that surpasses all understanding will be with you. Okay, that's a shortened version. I missed something there, but point being, God wants us to throw our anxieties on him, right? So if you're having in your house right now, if you're having financial issues or something like that, what does God want you to do?
Ask him for help.
There you go. If you're sick, what does God want you to do?
Call on him.
Amen. If your marriage is on the rocks, what does God want you to do?
Pray.
Well, there you go. So it's God wants you to bring everything that happens in your life to him. He wants you to bring it to him. It's not a hard thing for God. If he can create a universe, he can solve some financial issues. It's not that hard. He can do those things. So we need to, in every situation where there's a problem and we cannot find the solution, we need to realize that God is the one who can find that solution. So, make that a very important part of your life. Okay, verses 21 and 22, it says, "Now the rest of the deeds of Menahem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? Menahem slept with his fathers, and Pekahiah his son reigned in his place." The usual obituary for the kings. In verses, before I go on, any questions, comments? Okay, verses 23 and 24. Pekahiah's reign here. It says, "In the 50th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekahiah the son of Menahem began to reign over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 2 years." So we have another short reign here. His father reigned for 10, but this time we only get 2. "And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin." Same thing, same problem, just a different king. So, 25 and 26, it says, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, his captain. So this is Pekah, and then Pekahiah is the king. It can be easy to mix these two up here. So Pekahiah is the king, and then Pekah, the son of Remaliah, is his captain. It says he conspired against him with 50 men of the people of Gilead and struck him down in Samaria in the citadel of the king's house with Argob and Arieh. Or he put him to death and reigned in his place. Now the rest of the deeds of Pekahiah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. So we've already had 2 assassinations. We had Shalom kill Zechariah. Then we had Menahem kill Shalom. Now we have Pekah killing Pekahiah. So now we've got, this is 3 assassinations. It essentially, this is 3 assassinations in about 12 years. That's a lot of assassinations. So once again, it's just dysfunctional. It's just a dysfunctional government, dysfunctional people. Everything is wrong. It's a power struggle. There's no consistency. Everybody's running wild, probably. It's just a rough time. It's probably the wild, wild west in Israel right now. So, all right, now Pekah, the murderer. That's what these guys are, by the way. They're all murderers. You don't want a murderer on the throne. You don't want a murderer on the throne. In verses 27 and 28, in the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah. Now, by the way, notice how it says 52nd year of Azariah. So this is the year where he dies, but that's a long time in comparison to the reigns that we've seen in the north. I mean, it's a big difference. Pekah, the son of Remaliah, began to reign over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 20 years. Okay, all right. So at least we have some longevity here. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin over and over and over again. In the days of Pekah, I didn't highlight this one. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came. So that Tiglath-Pileser is Pul, the one who came earlier. He came and he captured Ijon, Abel, Beth Makkah, Genoa, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried away the people captive to Assyria. So Assyria is staking their claim early now. Later, they're going to come and take everybody. But for now, they're just going to take a lot of people for the time being. Now, it seems strange that a country, to us, it seems very strange that a country could just come in and steal people and walk away. That does seem pretty strange to us. But I think one of the reasons they were able to do it is because their leadership essentially allowed it to happen. Their leadership didn't fight for their people, for one. The other reason is because what they would do is they would go into a city, they would kill the useless people, probably the people who can't do anything. If you were sick, you were probably dead, whatever it was. And then they would take with them the people who were useful, and then they would use them for labor and things like that, free labor. So they can build up their own cities and things. This was pretty brutal. This was a pretty brutal thing to happen. So he carries them away to Syria. And then it says in verses 30 and 31, then Hoshea, the son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and struck him down. Oh my. And put him to death and reigned in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, the son of Uzziah. Now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. So that's number 4. It's number 4. So in one chapter, we have 4 assassinations. You know what makes this one worse? So the previous one, it was, now I've forgotten the name, so let me go back. Yes, so Pekah killed Pekahiah. Well, Pekah was the captain, was Pekahiah's captain, right? So they're working closely together. In this particular case, Hoshea, according to just history, was a really close friend of Elah, or excuse me, a really close friend of Pekah. So in this particular case, this was somebody he grew up with that killed him. That's pretty. I don't know the word for it, but that's pretty bad. So now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. Am I crazy for calling this dysfunctional? What do you guys think?
No.
No, it truly is dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm. It's just one problem after the other.
Yeah.
If you, I don't know. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you would think somebody would learn from the previous king, but they're not in a time where they're trying to learn. It's just a power struggle. One person thinks they have the best way, another person thinks they have the best way. Nobody's willing to work together. Nobody's willing to submit, and so they just kill the guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, ending the chapter with the final king. We end on a good note. Jotham goes to the south. So we started chapter 15 with Azariah, who's also called Uzziah. This is his son, Jotham. And it says, in the second year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. Okay, so we have a king here, and let's see what kind of a king he was. All right, verses 34 and 35. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that his father Uzziah had done. So, all right, good. So we finally have one who did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. That's good. We haven't heard that for 6 kings now. But he's not without his faults. In verse 35, nevertheless, the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. He built the upper gate of the house of the Lord. Okay, so he didn't get rid of the high places, but at least he built the upper gate of the house of the Lord. So he was working on the temple at least. But he just didn't have the backbone to come and do what was right, to take down the high places. He just wasn't the king to do it. And so once again, we have a king, but we have a king who's not without his faults. A leader, every leader has faults. The only leader in your life who has no faults is Jesus himself. That's it. So if you idolize anybody in your life, let it be Jesus himself. Every other person, your favorite singer, your favorite actor, your favorite preacher, your favorite elder, your favorite, even your parents. When I was a kid, my parents were perfect people. They were perfect. And as I've gotten older, and then when I became a teenager, they were the most empty-headed people I'd ever met in my life. And then when I became an adult, I realized they were a lot smarter than I thought they were. and I also realized that they're not faultless, but they could be a lot worse. And so I'm great. So I am grateful for my parents. That probably doesn't sound like a very good compliment, but I do mean to say, yes, I'm grateful for my parents. But I would be a fool to say that my parents are perfect. That would be a foolish thing to say, and it would be a foolish thing for all of us to say. Do not idolize humans; they will let you down every time. Ravi Zacharias, his entire life, everybody loved him, and when he died, he let people down. So just keep those things in mind. All right, keep going. In verses 36 through 38, it says, now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? In those days, the Lord began to send Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, against Judah. Jotham slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, his father, and Ahaz, his son, reigned in his place. All right, so we ended on a good high note here. Jotham wasn't so bad. There were no assassinations in the South. There were no killing of pregnant women in the South. There was, no senseless brutality. There was no power struggle. Things kind of continued. It wasn't perfect, but things continued. So at least we have that. But regardless of that, you guys are going to see it's not going to take too much longer for them to go the exact same direction as the people of the North. So, in fact, if I remember correctly, I was reading Jeremiah back a few weeks ago, and I wish I could remember it, but there was a scripture in there, and it said that they were worse. They became worse than the people in the North. So it says something there. All right. Any questions, comments? Anybody want to add something?
It truly was a dysfunctional chapter.
It's just the only word I could come up for it, In fact, that's the most positive word I could come up for it. Larry, I mean, Hubert must not be here, huh? Hubert, are you here?
Yeah,
Okay. Did you fall asleep on me? Usually you got the comments.
no,
Okay. Well, I guess I was just straightforward this evening, so that's good. That's good. All right. I don't think I have anything after this. Nope, that's it.
Who was that man that you wanted prayer for?
Glenda Humphreys texted me and asked me to put it on the prayer list, but we don't have a bulletin, so I sent it out in a text message. It was, I think his name was Ron Burton, and he was on a ventilator. I don't know if it was related to COVID, but she said that he was close to dying. That it seemed like he might die. So she just asked for prayer. So I don't know who it is, but somebody she knew. So okay. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Let's see. Brody.
DeAndre.
Sir, would you mind saying a closing prayer for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let us pray. Dear God, thank you for all the wonderful things you've done for us, and thank you for letting us have this Zoom call to learn more about you and study your word and come together virtually. And please help everyone with coronavirus to get better and help stop the spread. And in Jesus Christ I pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you.